You want the good news or the bad news first?
Let's start with the good news.
Let's start with the good news. Greg Dulcich does not have a hamstring injury.
Woo!
The bad news? He has a foot injury. Is that good news? Or is this like more encouraging news that we found out about this from Mike Klis over the weekend, that Greg Dulcich, it's not the hamstring that's bothering him for literally a fourth or fifth time in the past two seasons. In fact, it's the foot injury that he suffered at the end of the season last year in December, which held him out to end the season. He had to get off-season surgery on that foot. That's what's now holding him out of the off-season program. Now, are you guys more encouraged after hearing that it's not the hamstring and it's a new injury, or more discouraged because it's another injury for him?
It's the same to me. Like, it sucks that it's happening. There's always something happening, though, and until he's actually on the field playing football, you can't really plan on getting too much from him, and I don't think that changes regardless of which injury it is, at least to me.
I feel like it is more concerning because different things keep happening, and it's all lower body related. Now, if he had like a hand injury, that's something different. He'll come back from that. But
a fluke, a hammer fell on it or something.
You know what I mean? But I feel like just because your feet, your ankles, your calves, your hamstrings, they all kind of work together. And if your foot's not working right, and you go out there, we don't know if the hammy's back 100% yet or not. And now you're, controlling your foot differently, kind of trying to mediate the pain that you have there. Like, it's a little bit more concerning for me. Like,
And I think to your point, Todd, there was a little bit of, I think it was speculation. I don't know if it was actually official last year when he got the foot injury, that maybe it was related to all of the hamstring injuries that he had and the things he was doing in conditioning, or the things he wasn't able to do because of the hamstring injury. And then the foot literally like swelled in his shoe the very first practice that he was back after coming back from the hamstring injury last year. So it seemed like a fluky thing, but clearly his foot didn't just swell. There was something going on that required surgery. You don't get surgery if your foot just swells out of nowhere. To me, I'm going to go the opposite of you guys. Todd, you said it's more discouraging. Henry, you said neutral. I'm going to say it's more encouraging, and it's because, Todd, I think you said this last week with hamstring injuries. They're like, I don't know the time frame you said, like 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, and then typically they're good to go. But for Greg Dulcich, this would have now been his 4th or 5th hamstring in 2 years. So we're not talking about 4 or 5 weeks. We're talking about just like hamstring injuries that are months long and then pop up again when he does something. And so to me, I'm more encouraged that it's not this lingering injury that continued to get him. It does stink that it's something else now, but I actually think this is good news. Now, according to Mike Klis, there's a chance Greg Dulcich is back before mandatory minicamp is over for the Broncos. To me, what are we doing? Do not rush this. This guy needs it. You tried to rush him back last year, and he got injured the first practice he was back.
Yeah.
Give him these next 2 weeks off. Then he gets the next 5 or 6 weeks off where he can just calmly train for training camp, and then hope he's ready for training camp. But I'm not going to lie, guys. This news did get my hopes up for Greg Dulcich a little bit, which is huge because the Broncos need that tight end. Adam Troutman's a solid number 2. If Adam Troutman is trying to be Sean Payton's Jeremy Shockey, Jimmy Graham, you're asking for things that aren't going to happen.
Yeah. And you know what else is a good thing if they don't rush him back is that if they don't rush him back, then he can't leave. He has to train there because if you're not healthy entering the offseason, then you have to stay and do your training, at the facility.
You are mean,
So they get to keep, at least they get to keep eyes on him. Like, I think they want his best interest, which is to have him on the field. And
100%.
Although you could be in Turks and Caicos, you still get some weekends off here and there. I think it's best for everybody. If you're here, we can watch you and see what's causing his injuries and hopefully prevent them.
Instead of 3 weeks in Turks and Caicos, you can have 2 weekends.
Yeah.
I think 2 things. First of all, Sean said at the beginning of training camp, I think the quote was, "This isn't going to be something where we don't." Or OTAs. This isn't going to be something where we don't see him until training camp. So he kind of said like, he's going to be around here at some point. The other thing is, they might be being very patient. Like, he could have been good to go in February, and they said, you know what, we're just going to reduce injury risk here and say, you get half of OTAs. We're just going to sit you out of half of OTAs just to be like super sure that nothing happens. And then we'll let you go the second 2 weeks. Just reduce a little risk there. So we don't know exactly what the conversations are. I would be shocked if they're rushing Greg Dulcich back, just given what we know. So yeah, I mean, I would like to see him out there. It would make me feel better about what he could be. At the same time, like I've said before, if they decide we don't even want you in training camp, like you are literally just going to be put in a glass box where you're not going to get hurt, and then you're going to run your 12 seam routes a game. Like we'll put you in the slot, 12 seam routes, bang, bang, bang. No practices during the week. Just see how far we get in the season. I would get that approach too, but I'll be excited to see him on the field if he's on the field.
Yeah, that was the first question coming in on the DNVR Broncos mailbag. The second question, they came to the right spot. Our friend Arvada Luke has an inside linebacker question, but he has something before that. He says, hey, fellas, a scope, talking about what Audric Estime had, is short for arthroscopic procedure. They don't cut open the whole knee joint for procedures anymore, but make small holes and use a camera to do the surgery. It's a misnomer, but they are actually doing something other than taking a look during a scope. I can't get over this. Okay, so that's one thing. Have you ever had a scope?
No.
That's good.
Thank God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is a little more than just taking a look around. And that's why Audric Estime is going to be on the sideline until training camp.
Yeah, they're definitely working.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, this next one, where your expertise comes in, Todd. He says, I can't get over this inside linebacker situation. In a 3-4 or nickel, it feels like such an important position. Can you describe a prototypical ideal inside linebacker, and what trait would save them from being converted to a pass rusher? Why weren't you a pass rusher? You were in high school.
Yeah, in high school, yeah. I just think the body type is a little bit different. Like if you're like a premier pass rusher, you're usually like 6'3", 6'4", and you know what I'm saying, 250.
Yep.
More so than like inside linebackers are like probably like 6 foot to 6'3". So you got like one or two that may be 6'4", but everybody's kind of in that range.
Yep.
They usually like 220 to 240.
Yep.
At the most.
That's a good point. And then, I mean, you see Bradley Chubb on the outside, who's 6'5", 265.
There's no way that somebody's pencil whipping them numbers. Me and Chubb are like the same height. No, I'm just playing. He's taller than me. But no, yeah, I think there's body type difference. But really, I think linebackers, they can come in all different shapes and sizes, especially interior. It's just all about how you get off of blocks in the run game and then how efficient you are in the pass game. You know, most guys do better in zone coverage than man coverage. So if you have a guy that's really good in man coverage, those are guys you want to keep around. But it's really all about playing in the box, being physical with your hands, then also being able to like break and make tackles in open space.
And what's so interesting about this conversation is obviously Drew Sanders, Baron Browning, guys that could play inside linebacker, could play outside linebacker. The Broncos have had them both do both.
Yep.
And when I look at Baron Browning and Drew Sanders side by side, I'm like, Baron, you're an outside guy. Drew, you're an inside guy. Baron looks like he's built like an outside linebacker. Drew looks like he's built like an inside linebacker. And so it is interesting that before Drew's injury, they were going to have him start and play on the outside. But, I mean, it's a really good point. The inside linebacker position sometimes does not get valued, but also, like, how important are running backs? Pretty damn valuable.
Exactly.
Yet just the market's not there. How important are star cornerbacks? Very important, as we talked about on Monday's podcast. The highest paid cornerback's getting $21 million a year. The highest paid receiver, the guy they cover, is getting paid $35 million a year. And teams take advantage of that.
Yep.
And so the Broncos will probably take advantage of Pat Surtain and the wide receiver or the cornerback market only being $21 million. They'll probably give him just a couple million more than that, where a team can't do that at the receiver position because of where prices are.
Yeah, definitely. To me, like the inside linebacker, there's like boxier. You know, you're not as tall, arms aren't as long.
Arms need to be long, just use them for different things.
This feels like a personal attack.
Well, no, there's just like a lot of, we got to work on the phrasing with all this stuff. But you typically see like the 33 inches for the edge guys where it's like crazy. And you want to have them, but typically square, more stout. Like you're more of like going straight forward and
kind of like a D tackle versus a D end.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Similar, yeah.
We're just trying to like hit somebody and stop them, and not so much be as agile and try to turn the corner as much as you'd like to be able to do everything.
Yeah, I think of a lot more one-track mind for that outside linebacker, where you got to be great. You got to either have the bend, the power, but you're really only going one direction for the most part, maybe two. For an inside linebacker, you don't have to have that one elite trait. But you got to be able to run backwards. You have to be able to go in coverage. You do have to be able to blitz. You have to be able to go left, right, side to side as well. So an elite one-trick pony as opposed to a do-it-all sort of, you don't have to have that one elite trait either.
Well, I think the more I think about it, it's not even like there's like an inside linebacker box and outside linebacker box, because there really are just so many different types. Like you even think of Josie and Alex, two very, very different players. Josie being the stout, like true Mike type, where you really are just plugging holes, and Alex being the longer armed and taller, faster linebacker who flows sideline to sideline, more of like the weak side linebacker than the just Mike. So even just simplifying to inside and outside really is lazy.
But I think even Josie and Alex, they do similar things. I think you can say Josie is better at, with the Broncos, better at stepping up and hitting a pulling guard. Doesn't mean that he wasn't great at flowing over the top.
True.
Just like Alex. I think the jobs are very similar. It's just about how, because Alex takes on blocks too. He just sheds them a little bit quicker. Like Josie likes to hit and look and then get off and make the play. I think Alex wants to touch you, pause, for as short as he can, you know what I'm saying? And just kind of get off and make his play.
Definitely.
So I think their jobs are very similar, even though their body types are a little different. But I think just the play that you need to have and the things you need to do as an inside linebacker are very similar for both guys.
Yeah.
So then I'm curious, your former teammates, Danny Trevathan and Brandon Marshall, in 2015, before Danny left and you took over, were they similar or different? Because from an outsider's perspective, I see those guys as kind of what Hank's saying, as very different sort of players. Were they more similar than we think?
They're more similar than you think. I think Danny was thought to be faster, which I think Danny was fast. But after Danny left, Brandon moved to his position. I went into Brandon's. So you could, if you didn't know,
Clearly
you would think,
wasn't slow enough. Or
exactly.
that slow. Yeah.
You wouldn't think that happened. You think I maybe came in and played Danny's position, but because Brandon was as versatile as he was, he went to Danny's. I went in, but you couldn't differentiate Brandon playing that position or Danny playing that position because of how similar they were.
I didn't realize this. We're going to have to really dive into this, especially with some off-seasons coming up. And speaking of, we're going to be doing a mailbag every week. We want your questions, want to hear from you. Leave your questions over at thednvr.com on this post, or you can leave it on any podcast, and we'll make sure to read it. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you the rest of this week on the podcast side and on the mailbag side next week.
We all silly like the mayor.